The real problem lies elsewhere, and the real problem lies in what you've been seeing, the tamasha that's been going on in the board right now. There was a judgment some years ago by the Supreme Court. I think it's a fairly unfortunate judgment, but perhaps it can be explained away in the context in which the judgment was delivered. That was a case brought by ZTV against ESPN, against the BCCI, for rescinding its contract, cancelling its contract. In that, the question was whether the actions of the BCCI could come under judicial review or under judicial scrutiny. And the Supreme Court said, no, it's a private body, and therefore, BCCI is not a state or an authority as contemplated under the Constitution. Therefore, the courts can do nothing about it. Now, I think this judgment is wrong. I hope it's only confined to a commercial contract, because it's too late in the day to contend. The BCCI is a power center. It controls the lives of cricketers. There's such a lot of public interest involved in the game of cricket. I mean, you know, we've given those instances where some states have used this as a tool for their foreign, lay down their foreign policies. So it's too late in the day to contend that it's a private body. Plus, they have been doled out tremendous largesse by the state. They have been given large tracts of land like stadiums. They've been given a monopolistic power, and a person can only represent the country if he is capped by the BCCI. Because the BCCI the ICC has been informed that they must give the proper accreditation to the BCCI. And it is only because the state stands behind the BCCI that the BCCI has an international standing. So it's too late in the day for anyone to contend that it is not an arm or not an extension. And I think this judgment sooner or later will be called in question. And I think it will be, this one incident is going to provoke that whole jurisprudence to be raked up again. And it must necessarily be called into question. Now, it's because the BCCI is perceived or thought of by the people who rule it to be a private body that they think they can get away with anything. And like I said, the balance sheet is not known to anyone. You don't know what it's worth, etc. And therefore you have this complete conflicted interest in it. It's unheard of that the president of the BCCI can own a team over which he exercises disciplinary action. What fairness, it's like and I'm surprised, I'm absolutely disappointed and shocked that a clever lawyer like Arun Jaitley should just sit and watch this happen. He should know better than anyone else that when he steps into a court and the judge finds that he's got some remote interest in the cause, he recuses himself and says, not before me. Now, how can you have this? And so what do they do? What's the formula? That he steps aside and let someone else, a bigger crook, come there and take charge who's got a record of an embezzler, who the very BCCI had banned for 6 years. So he comes and replaces him. How is it different from Lalu Prasad replacing himself with Rabri Devi? It's exactly the same thing happening all over again. The parallel is there for everyone to see. Now, it is this that has to be completely decried. It has to be completely condemned. What's happening over there. And you have these fence sitters doing nothing about it. Let me just caution you and just put this one little thought in your minds before I wind up in a couple of minutes. There is one other insidious and one other rather murky side to gambling, and that is money laundering. Today you know that money laundering is perhaps the greatest evil against which you've had, Obama come out with such policies relating to, in fact, one of the rationales of his to support General Motors was that he didn't want General Motors to completely fade away. He wanted them to come out and invent cars over the next 10, 15 years, which would be fuel efficient. Why fuel efficient? So that the country would be less reliant on oil obtained from Arabian countries, from Saudi Arabia, which is a hotbed of terrorism. The whole idea is to wean yourself away and not enrich those countries. Now, gambling of this magnitude certainly results in money laundering, and we've heard that there are rumors that Dawood has got a hand in all this. Now, what is Dawood going to use his money except to have another bomb blast over here? Now this is a serious angle to gambling. And are you telling me that the BCCI would not be aware of the risks that run and allow this? But because it conducts itself in such an opaque manner, is completely dictated by complete opacity. Tell me one reason, why can the selection of a cricket team not be televised? All your deliberations in Parliament are televised. They throw chairs at each other, that's also televised. Why can you not have the thinking, why can it not be told us, why is so-and-so cricketer preferred to so-and-so cricketer? What are his good points and bad points? What are the pros and cons? Tell me any reason why this should be kept, why there should be such a cloak and dagger approach to this. Obviously because they do not want their actions to come under public scrutiny, or for that matter under judicial scrutiny. That is where the malice lies. So don't make Srishant the face of this controversy. The malice lies somewhere else. I mean, this is really how it is, and the time has come now for these people sitting on the board to realize that cricket, whether played on the field or in the boardroom, needs balls. Pun intended. I think in this entire tamasha, a person on the board just needs to know two things to survive. He needs to know two ingredients. He needs to know bread, and he needs to know butter, and he must have the wisdom to realize which side of the bread is buttered. Thank you.
Thank you, Harish. We have time for questions. Yes, Arun?
Harish, if I understand you right, if Mr. Mayappan can only be charged under criminal breach of trust, the owner of the Super Kings would have to file a complaint, or can there be a suo motu cognizance of the offence?
It can be suo motu.
Yes.
It can be suo motu, Arun, because in criminal law you really do, the question of locus is very, very wide. Anyone on the street can be aggrieved. So you can do it. I mean, you want to meet me at my office after this meeting? we can do something about it.
Yes, Sandeep.
Two questions, Harish. One, in the Mayappan Srinivasan, where Srinivasan keeps on harping that he's an honorary member of the CSK and he's not really any official of the CSK team. Will that hold water? And by that same stretch of thinking, can we call Mayappan an honorary member of the Srinivasan family also? That's one. The second thing is I disagree on one point that cricket imitates life. You mentioned that you get only one chance, you die. I think take your mind back to Kieran Pollard dropping those 3 catches in a row.
Yes, but when he was caught, he was declared out. No. Your first question that whether Mayappan can, I don't think so. This muck is far too deep. And examine it this way. Why is the CBI keeping out of all this? I don't, in fact, that's one of the follow-up. If you declare the BCCI to be a state, that's the first, you declare it to be a state, straight away the RTI Act will apply, much more will be known about them, and they cannot get away with impunity. They cannot get away because then anyone manning it becomes a public servant so as to come within the vice of the Prevention of Corruption Act. Now, I don't know how many of you have dealt with situations like this. Banks, where the manager or a general manager of a bank has, in one sense, deviated slightly from the guidelines, but for purely commercial reasons, and he has given a loan in excess of his powers, but doing it with the welfare of the bank has made no money on the side. Matters like this come under the scrutiny of the Prevention of Corruption Act, and I have seen myself, and I've defended some of them, after they retire, because when they are in service, you require the permission of the employer to prosecute them. But after they retire, they lose their immunity. And the CBI gets after them, and for the next 10 years, they are under watch, and they're sometimes arrested. And once you're arrested, you have a juridical relationship with the court, which lasts for years and years. You cannot travel, you cannot do anything except with their permission. Now this is for something which are on the face of it innocuous. Now here we have heard a lot of things. We have heard of contracts being issued by the BCCI to clubs, contracts which are not questioned, running into several crores of rupees. You are telling me that this is not something, and you can take shelter or take protection behind the fact that you call yourself an honorary member? Certainly not. He's participated in all these auctions, this, that, and the other. He's very so. I thank God he didn't call himself an honorable member. He only said honorary member.
Yes, Colin.
Harish, well spoken. BCCI is definitely a public body. If RTI can now apply, as is held now, you must have read in the newspapers just yesterday, it can apply to all political parties. Why not to BCCI?
Only thing, Kamal, is that this judgment is in the way. This judgment, ZTV versus BCCI, the majority view is taken is that it is not a state or other authority under Article 12. Now, therefore, it treats us as a... Now, I'm saying that, according to me, that judgment should be confined to the facts of that case. Namely, it was in the context of a commercial transaction. Because, you know, the old judgments on Article 12, where it's not that you're a state for all purposes. It's a functional test. So you may be a state for some purposes, you may not be a state for other purposes. But this proposition right now is yet requires to be revised. One has to declare the BCCI to be a state or a governmental authority for then these provisions to apply.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of the club, it's my pleasure to present you a memento to remind you of that.